Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. This is the first in a two-part series called Funding Clean Energy Projects and Building the Workforce. Today's webinar is New York State programs, and we are so glad you made it. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our presenters today, but first I'll just give you some Zoom etiquette and housekeeping. If you want to ask a question, please do so in the chat box. You can also introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself or your business in the chat box as well if you'd like. We have three presenters today, and they're each going to present for about 15 minutes. At the end, we hope to have about 15 or 20 minutes for Q&A. So we're going to try to save most questions for the end. If you have a question that is a clarifying question that you feel like you need an answer to right then to understand, please put it in the chat box and we'll try to break in and interrupt the presenters briefly and ask them that question. Otherwise, you can put your questions in the chat box and I will ask them at the end, or you're welcome to ask them yourself at the end. So our presenters today, we have first Adele Ferrante, who is Director of Workforce Development and Training at NYSERDA. She's been at NYSERDA for 28 years, managing research and development projects for roughly 10 years. She developed and managed NYSERDA's first PV incentive program. She has been working in energy workforce training programming for more than 15 years. And for the past 4 years, she's been focusing on workforce training initiatives. Lovely to have you, Adele. Really looking forward to your presentation. Our second presenter will be Sarah Smiley. She is the Director of Municipal Membership and Transactions Manager for Energy Improvement Corporation, or EIC, which is a nonprofit local development corporation which administers Property Assessed Clean Energy Financing, or PACE financing. She will get into all the details of that. Sarah collaborates with local governments and community stakeholders to enable this public benefit finance tool and works with open CPACE capital providers to facilitate the finance application and closing process. And finally, we have Wes Adrianson, who is an associate on New York Green Bank's investment and portfolio management team, where he supports the origination, evaluation, and execution of scalable clean energy and sustainable infrastructure project investments across New York State. Before joining New York Green Bank, Adrianson was a project manager with the Clinton Climate Initiative. And he has also worked at the state level on clean energy policy analysis at Secretary Granholm's American Jobs Project, and also supported interagency climate resilience coordination at the Obama White House. We're very glad to have him as well. Thank you everyone for coming, and without further ado, we will jump into Adele's presentation. And I guess now is a good moment to mention that we are re-recording this intro because of technical difficulties. And so we will jump into Adele's presentation, but you will miss the first 5 or 6 slides of her presentation, unfortunately. Thank you so much. Enjoy the presentations today.
On our way to reaching for offshore wind, distributed solar, energy storage, and energy efficiency. Next slide, please. And the next slide will just kind of give you a schedule for, hang on a second, for when these goals kick in, looking at our near-term goals for 2030, what's on the horizon for 2035 through 2050. So again, just giving you a view of those climate action goals over time. Next slide, please. So how are we going to get there? Obviously, we're making some tremendous investments in these technologies and resources throughout NYSERDA and utility programs. But as we think about what our goals are for the Workforce Development and Training Program, we're really trying to support market needs for workforce training. We're not trying to interfere with what the market's doing. We want to make sure we're supporting with our gaps, where there are skills gaps, training gaps. Again, thinking about training for new workers as well as existing workers. We have over $120 million for workforce development and training. We've committed or spent over half of that. And our goal with that pot of money is to train about 40,000 New Yorkers. Again, I mentioned we're about 60% of the way spent, and I think we're at about 80% of our training goal. So we're doing really well, despite delays with COVID, despite pauses on hands-on training and in-person training. So a lot of work to do still, but we're making good progress. And again, we're really looking to meet business needs for training. We're not just going to train 100 people on heat pumps and hope they get a job. If we're doing heat pump training, there are industry partners, part of the team, they're interviewing, perhaps they're providing opportunities for site visits, they may be informing curriculum. So there's got to be some business needs for everything we do. Next slide, please. I thought I'd kind of go over some of our programs in general, and you'll have these slides afterwards, I'm sure. They'll be available by me, of course. And we have 3 different solicitations on the left that are really trying to help businesses bring on new workers or provide internship opportunities for people exploring clean energy careers. And I'll walk you through those quickly. And at the same time, we're trying to build training capacity. We're trying to build up infrastructure at community colleges, BOCES, trade associations, union training programs. Again, wherever there's a need, wherever there's a gap. And we're doing that in 3 different solicitations. One is pretty broad, covers most of the energy efficiency and clean technology categories. One is specifically targeted at offshore wind. And the other is really for building operations and maintenance training only. And that's really geared towards property management companies and large building owners. And every one of these solicitations on here is currently open. So next slide. I mentioned the 3 programs on the left of the last slide, and it's really about providing support to businesses. The first is the on-the-job training program, where we're providing wage subsidies to employers to bring on new workers and to have a training plan for them while they're working on the job. Our average incentive is about $8,000 per worker, and it covers a broad categories of clean energy technologies. If you hire people from priority populations or disadvantaged communities, the incentive is significantly higher, and we have a higher incentive for all work in the area of heat pumps or building electrification. Our internship program is just what it says. We're providing intern wage subsidies to businesses that hire interns. And it really is more about the intern than the business here. We're trying to give more young adults and graduating college folks or even transitioning folks an opportunity to get some experience in a clean energy career. And our newest offering, we had this open 1 or 2 times not too long ago, but we've since revamped it, and it was just re-released about a week ago, is our Climate Justice Fellowship. And that's a subsidy of $40,000 to hire a fellow to work on clean energy, climate justice work in a disadvantaged community. And we're excited about this offering. And the great thing about these 3 programs, if you hire an intern, you can bring them on as a full-time worker under the OJT program or even as a fellow. So we let people leverage the different programs. And if you're a fellow, if you're going to be hired as a fellow and the company wants to hire you, they can come back to us under the OJT program. So combining incentives. So as you think about it, our average subsidy for an intern is about $4,000 or $5,000. I mentioned about $8,000 for OJT and $40,000 for the fellowship program. So you do the math. It's the 4 plus the 8, 12 plus the 40. It's $52,000 potentially for just one worker for us to bring them along in the clean energy economy. Not anything to sneeze at. Next slide. This is just a snapshot of all the different employers across the state that are participating in our OJT or incentive programs. Next slide. And I just want to give you some examples. So we're working with Advanced Radiant Design out of Stone Ridge, New York, and they're a heating contractor. And they've used our on-the-job training program to hire 10 people. Again, I mentioned that subsidy on average could be up to $8,000 a person. So far, they've received more than $70,000 in reimbursements from NYSERDA for the on-the-job training program. And the great thing about this program is we work really closely with the New York State Department of Labor. We partner with them to help find candidates, to help vet the businesses that are participating in the program. And they've been a really strong partner in this program. Next slide, please. Another great example is One Green Nation. They are a company that works with energy efficiency equipment and solutions out of New Paltz. So far, they've hired 3 people through the on-the-job training program for heat pump sales, LED lighting sales, and as you see, they've received about $23,000 in OJT incentives to date. And as I mentioned, we'd like to talk to the companies participating in one of the programs to make sure they know that, hey, you could also bring on interns, perhaps the fellowship program is an opportunity for you. And the neat thing about those 3 programs now is we have them all going through the same portal to apply. Once you apply as a business, you can click off which of the 3 programs you're interested in participating in: internships, OJT, or fellowships. Next slide, please. So I talked a little bit about how we're trying to build up training capacity, and this is the category of energy efficiency and clean technology. And again, we're focusing on new worker training or existing worker training, and our typical partners are BOCES or technical high schools, community colleges, trade associations, manufacturers, unions, community-based organizations. Next slide, I'll give you a few examples. So we're working with SUNY Ulster to develop a pre-apprenticeship training program to bridge the skills gap for incumbent energy auditors and to attract new workers to the residential and small commercial market. The courses are in Spanish and English, and some of the partners include Youth Build, the Ulster County Sheriff's Office, Citizens for Local Power, and they're developing stackable micro-credentials in building envelope, heating, cooling, automation systems, PV, passive solar, and all these trainings can help lead to a associate's degree of occupational studies, or can be layered or combined with degrees outside of clean technology. So we love programs that give people multiple pathways, potential to stack credentials, transferable skills. And as you see from the bottom, 438 program graduates to date, with 81 coming from our priority populations or disadvantaged communities. Most of those have been incumbent workers, 122 are new workers, and about 167 of those completed training on heat pumps. So a great example of providing training to people for different opportunities with many important partners in the community. Next slide, please. 32BJ, we're working with 32BJ, and they work closely with individuals who work in multifamily buildings. They're working with Certus Controls to develop a comprehensive training on HVAC and building management systems. Their goal is to train 600 union members, and most of those reside in environmental justice communities in New York City. It's an 11-week course with HVAC fundamentals, BMS basics, and advanced training on building management systems. And they also have a train the trainer element. So we're always looking for opportunities to build up our training infrastructure. And that's going to be really important as we try to figure out how we scale up. They trained 130 union members to date, and about half of those are from disadvantaged communities or priority populations. And as part of that program, they developed new curriculum that will be used throughout their training programs as 32BJ moves forward on their training for the union members. Next slide. I mentioned the Climate Justice Fellowship Program. That's the one we just revamped. It's a 12-month position. This is the program I mentioned has a $40,000 subsidy from NYSERDA. About $37,000 of that goes towards the wage, which is about $18 or so an hour. The other $3,000 goes towards wraparound services. The business has to provide full-time benefits, and many businesses that we've worked with so far provide the fellows with additional salary. So our $37,000 is the base. The neat thing about our fellowship program, and we're trying to figure out how to leverage this assistance to our other programs, We're working with Columbia University to provide those fellows with mentorship, peer-to-peer exchanges, and continuing education. If the fellows complete this 12-hour series of courses from Columbia University, they get a certificate of completion, and we feel that that's another tool for them as they move into the workforce. So we're excited about the Columbia University support for fellows. Next slide. We've got about $6 million for the fellowship program. We had earlier rounds of NYSERDA funding for the fellowship program. These are just a couple of the companies that we're working with as examples. And again, the fellows have had some great experiences. Sometimes the fellowship doesn't work out, and that's okay too. But the goal is really to give people experience in great climate justice, clean energy work within a disadvantaged community. Next slide. So if you go to our website, and you'll have these links here when you get the slide deck, we have some great case studies of some of our other projects to just give you a better flavor of all the different things we're doing, whether it's on the job training or some of the training partners under the solicitation for clean energy and energy efficiency. So we thought we would give you some more links to look at the case studies and the link to our fact sheet, which is just an overview of all our different programs. So I think that's the last slide. I know I went over an awful lot, but I want to give you a flavor of what we're doing with some relevant examples, and happy to answer any questions.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Adele. I think we should save all the questions till the end, unless someone has a very pressing question. If so, you can put it into the chat box. And but let me get this going towards Sarah, our next presenter. Sarah,
Hi.
I'm going to make you the co-host, and I think you should be able to do your slides that way.
Okay.
If there's any issues with it.
I think I can. Okay, I think you're seeing it now.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm Sarah Smiley. I'm Director of Municipal Membership and Transaction Manager for Energy Improvement Corporation, or EIC for short. And so we are the program administrator for the Open CPACE program. And it's essentially financing for improvements to buildings within the commercially owned buildings within the community. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Just to give you a little bit of background about EIC, we're a not-for-profit local development corporation. And so the members of our corporation are those municipalities that have opted in to the Open CPACE program. And we're really honored to be working with Ulster County to be offering this program as one of the suite of services that one of their initiatives to advance the clean energy economy. And it is EIC's mission to operate a successful commercial PACE finance program to advance the state's clean energy goals and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. And so as the name suggests, it's financing for clean energy, and it's secured through an assessment that's attached to the property that receives the improvements. And it's authorized by state law because the state recognized that access to capital was a real hurdle for building owners to make improvements that would help them stop wasting energy from their buildings. We know buildings are a huge source of greenhouse gas emissions in New York because of the older building stock. So they wanted to offer an ability to help business owners pay for those improvements or to build new buildings that are much more energy efficient from the ground up. So this law authorized municipalities to provide financing for energy efficiency measures or renewable energy, and to secure that repayment of the financing through an assessment that's recorded on the land records for the property. So it's similar to other public benefits and how they're funded, whether it's sidewalk repair or water and sewer districts, except in this case, it's for clean energy improvements. And the assessment is attached just to the property that's being improved, not to an entire district. And the way a municipality opts in is through adopting a local law to enable the program and signing an agreement with EIC, which authorizes us to administer the program on the municipality's behalf. PACE is an alternative form of capital, so it's different from just going to your bank to get a conventional loan. It can be used up to 100% of the cost of the energy portion of the construction project. And it's repaid at a fixed rate that can be repaid over a term that can match the expected life of the improvements. So that could be as long as 20 to 25 years, depending on the project that's being installed. So this enables building owners to afford much more significant improvements to their properties that can reduce their operating expenses, as well as providing a public benefit to the community through reducing emissions from the building. And so a building owner might want to use this because they want to reserve their existing capital for regular operating needs, other costs of the business, or because they want to reserve their existing lines of credit for those other business needs, because PACE is an alternative that's only available for the energy efficiency or renewable energy improvements to the building. And because it is backed by this assessment to the property, it runs with the property. So if the building owner decides to sell the building, the remainder of that assessment transfers to the new owner, who is also getting the benefit of the improved property. And our program is called Open C-PACE because it's an open market commercial PACE program. So we have a list, which I'll show you in a moment, of capital providers who actually provide the financing. EIC doesn't provide the financing directly. We're a program administrator that operates it on behalf of the municipality. So this could be used if there are repairs that the owner has been putting off because they don't have access to capital, or because they just want to renovate the building to make it much more energy efficient, more comfortable, and less costly to operate. PACE financing is attractive to developers because it's a lower cost of capital than other sources that they might use for new construction. So by allowing them access to PACE financing, they're being incentivized to include measures that would increase the efficiency, measures that they might not necessarily include in the construction budget, except because they have access to this lower cost source of capital. And so it's really providing a way to enable development that's more sustainable, because it can allow new construction to be built to a higher standard of efficiency that's higher than code. And depending on the lease arrangement of the building, the PACE assessment can be passed down to tenants who also benefit from the lower utility bills and a more comfortable building. Essentially, any building can qualify for PACE. It does have to be owned by a corporate entity, including not-for-profits. So it cannot be anything that's owned by an individual, and it can be anything that's owned by a government entity as well, because it is secured through this assessment on the property. But other than that, it can really be across any sector that can benefit from these improvements. NYSERDA is the state agency that has been authorized to provide guidelines for what can qualify for PACE financing. So EIC refers to those NYSERDA PACE guidance in determining if a project can qualify for the financing. And as you can see, there's a whole range of types of projects that can qualify. Essentially anything that is going to reduce energy consumption or that is generating renewable energy on site can potentially qualify for PACE financing. And this is can be used for existing buildings or for new construction. And there are a number of different pathways to qualify. If you're looking at a single measure, you can go that route, or you can do a whole building renovation or improvements. There are, if you're going to get incentives through a NYSERDA program or utility rebate program, going through those programs can qualify the project for PACE financing as well. And if you're building a new building to a higher energy standard, so say it's LEED certified or Energy Star or building to New York Stretch Code, those are also pathways to qualify the funding to come from PACE financing. And in order to qualify, you do need to have an energy audit done for the project or a renewable energy feasibility study. This is the list of capital providers who are approved so far to participate in the program. So as you can see, there are many choices available. We encourage property owners to talk to as many of the providers as they would like to make sure that they can get the best rate for their project. And these capital providers would also work with you through the application and transaction process. So they would put together the documents. They could also help you in terms of the energy audit process. And they're the primary contact with EIC throughout the whole application and the closing. Once you're ready to start a transaction, EIC does have an application on our website that allows us to confirm that the property is eligible and that it meets certain basic underwriting criteria. So it can't be in bankruptcy, you have to be current on your tax payments and mortgage payments. And because the PACE assessment, while it's junior to municipal taxes, because it's a municipally authorized assessment, it is senior to any non-municipal liens on the property. So if there's a mortgage on the property, we do require a consent form signed by the mortgage bank before we can proceed with the PACE financing. So once we confirm that it meets those criteria, the capital provider would submit the application starting with the energy report for the project. And EIC has an independent engineer who reviews that report to make sure that it does in fact meet NYSERDA's guidelines and it's providing a public benefit by being, an energy efficient project. And also to determine what the expected useful life is of those measures, because that determines how long a term you can be offered for the financing. Once it meets that technical hurdle and qualifies, you would enter into a finance agreement with the capital provider, and then EIC would record the lien on the land records for the property and then assign that lien to the capital provider. And so going forward, even though it's a municipally authorized assessment, EIC actually bills the property owner directly. So it will not be seen on your tax bill. You'll get a separate bill from EIC directing you to remit payment to the capital provider. This program, OpenSea PACE, launched in 2019. And because of how it's designed so that municipalities can offer the public benefit of PACE financing without taking on any burden of administering the program or being involved in the payment, we've seen a lot of interest on the municipality side in offering the program. And because through this list of private capital providers, there's a lot more capital available to deploy. So we've seen a lot of interest from property owners and developers. And as you can see, a significant benefit to communities through reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from these improved properties. We have a list of the completed projects or all the projects that have used the financing on our website, but I'll show you a few sample projects just so you can see the scope and the range of property types that have benefited. The first one I'm happy to say is right in Ulster County. This is a new hotel, new construction called Wildflower Farms, and they used PACE financing to achieve Energy Star certification for the property. So, a range of measures, which can include insulation, windows, LED lighting, HVAC improvements as well. This is another new construction project, also a hotel that will be built in Albany County. We've actually had a number of hotels using PACE financing for new construction. This is another Energy Star building. This is a very different type of project. This is a greenhouse farm in Niagara County. So we operate statewide. So we have projects all across the state. And this was a very energy intensive business running this greenhouse. So they used PACE financing to install energy efficiency measures, including LED lighting, and to really reduce the energy use of the property. And it also involved other agricultural controls that gave them much more efficiency over the production of their crops. This is a hotel in downtown Syracuse. So this was an existing building, historic building that was undergoing a major renovation. So they used PACE financing to for the energy portions of those renovations. So multiple energy efficiency measures. This is another new construction project. The first multifamily new construction project, and in New York using PACE, and again, multiple energy efficiency measures so that you're building a better building from the get-go and don't have to retrofit later. And we also have a couple of other multifamily new construction projects that have utilized PACE. This is an example of solar project in Suffolk County. We have several solar projects that have utilized PACE. And this one is in Suffolk County. And in terms of the other types of projects, we've seen several gut renovation adaptive reuse projects where they're converting a building that either had been sitting vacant or just was underused, and they were changing the use of the property. Had like a downtown office building being converted to apartments, an old Jesuit missionary building that was being converted to an educational institution. So they used PACE financing for those major renovation projects to make the building much more energy efficient. And here is my contact information. Thank you very much. I look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was great. Okay, so we have one more presenter, Wes Adrianson, for those who arrived late, and he is with Green Bank. Wes, I'm gonna make you, oh, there we go.
Okay, can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Ugreen, for having me. So nice to be in great company. And nice to hear kind of what you're working on, Adele and Sarah. Those are awesome presentations. So I'm going to talk a little bit about New York Green Bank. So we are the Green Bank for New York State. We're actually a division of NYSERDA. We're a $1 billion state-sponsored clean energy investment fund that is all about mobilizing private capital to support New York State's ambitious energy goals. And again, I'm Wes Adrianson. I'm an associate on the investments team here, and I've been here for about 2 years. Let's see if I can get to the next slide. Okay, great. So New York State's clean energy and climate goals. I'm the lucky one because Adele already covered this, so I don't have to. Great, so New York Green Bank. So our goal here is to alleviate specific financing gaps in New York's sustainable infrastructure and clean energy markets to help create a more sustainable, equitable energy system. Our typical investment size is about 10 to 50 million, although neither of those are hard caps. We've done a bit smaller and a bit larger. And we were actually started in 2013 with our first investment in 2015, and it's really ramped up since then, which is amazing. So why are green banks necessary? Some folks on the call have probably heard about green banks. There's quite a few now in the US, which is great. There's state level, regional, local green banks. And now, of course, there's talk, thanks to the IRA, about this greenhouse gas reduction fund. So maybe a national green bank too. So green banks supports clean energy sustainability projects by helping to develop that market scale that might not exist. So for us, that means a lot of the times looking at technologies or specific applications of technologies that some of the other banks down the street here maybe just don't want to do the brain damage on. And so we are unfortunately willing to do that brain damage, and we can kind of come up with structures that will solve specific problems here in New York, specific to some of our specific, regulatory environments, which is great. We can also support small to medium-sized projects through facilitating aggregation and warehousing. We develop innovative financing techniques and kind of try to spread the word about financing structures that we're seeing work, so that other banks can jump in. Impact at a glance. So we've committed over 1.7 billion so far. A whole bunch of that has been repaid. I think that's like 1.3 billion has come back so far, with the rest outstanding. We've done over 100 transactions, 8 technology segments. So a lot of great impact so far. This is a nice overview kind of the change in our concentration, our technology concentration over time. So the first couple of years was a whole lot of community solar, which is fantastic. And we're very happy to have contributed to the really just massive growth that we've seen in the community solar market in New York State, which includes some great projects in the Hudson Valley. So now, you know, as some of the products that we've worked on have become a little bit more familiarized, we haven't had to do as many of those, which is great. So you can see that our concentration has really kind of changed, and we've done a lot more you know, decarbonized commercial buildings. We've done decarbonized affordable housing. Increasingly, we're looking at battery storage, electric transportation. Basically, our goal here is to try to, you know, stay a step ahead and be there to fill those financing gaps as fast as they come. And now with the IRA, there's a whole lot of new challenges and like new puzzles to figure out. So we're trying to move quickly here in 2023. Just on the workforce point, we unfortunately don't have really great metrics yet internally on this, but just on the solar piece, our current portfolio, so like our committed capital to date, is expected to support 1,500 megawatts of distributed solar, which is a decent chunk of the distributed solar in the state. We're expecting that to be more than 15% of New York State's total distributed solar goal, which is exciting. So we're having a decent impact. And then as of 2021, and Adele could probably correct me if this number is not up to date, but there was something like 13,000 New York jobs in solar. So, you know, hopefully we're contributing to a good portion of those jobs. So how do we specifically overcome barriers? You know, here's some examples of the barriers that we see: limited number of financing partners. We can be a first mover. Unfamiliarity with asset classes. You know, so maybe the banks are unfamiliar with electric vehicle chargers. So we can actually turn to some of our colleagues within NYSERDA. We've got just a whole ton of experts right across the street here and say, you know, what really are the risks here, and leverage that expertise to kind of mitigate risk and develop financing structures that can move capital quickly. Perceived uncertainty of revenue streams, you know, so much like a normal project finance lender, like we always want to see contracted revenue, but we've been able to get smart on merchant payments, incentives, etc. We can do some smaller and medium transaction sizes, etc. So for an investment to be eligible for us to take a look at in New York Green Bank, it's got to just reduce greenhouse gas emissions in New York State. So that one's pretty straightforward. It should mobilize private capital. So we don't want to be the only people in the capital stack. It needs to be economically and technically feasible. So, you know, unfortunately, we're not going to take technology risk. So, you know, if you've just invented something incredible, you should probably go talk to venture capital. Like, we want to see technology that can be deployed really quickly and is proven. And then obviously strong financial returns and regular cash flows. And these are some of the technologies we've been looking at. Energy efficiency, clean transportation, and energy storage are kind of top of the agenda right now. And then a big priority for us is also providing benefits to disadvantaged communities under the climate law. So we're really excited about kind of the new focus in our portfolio, especially on decarbonized affordable housing, which is an area that I think we can just see win-win-wins kind of across the board. So hoping to see more of that this year. So yeah, we operate like a commercial project finance lender. Generally, we lend at market interest rates and market terms because we want this stuff to be replicable. So, you know, there is some exception there to the extent that projects can benefit disadvantaged communities. We can get a little bit more flexible because that's a core strategic priority, but generally, we're looking at market terms here. Here are some potential roles in the capital stack for us. So generally debt, we can do short-term, long-term. So in the short term, construction, warehouse aggregation, bridge, which could include bridge to interconnection for renewable energy projects, or bridge to tax equity incentives, or bridge, to specific NYSERDA and utility incentives we've done. And then long term, often it's senior secured, so first lien, subordinated, or occasionally, and we also do back leverage and tax equity deals, which are really common in this space. So how to access our financing. So if you're interested, or folks are working on exciting projects in New York here, we'd love to hear about them. So we have a RFP portal online, which folks can submit to. We score everything that comes in the door, and then within 1 or 2 weeks can get you a response. And there's some detail on our website about what proposals can include. In terms of some projects in the Hudson Valley, and hopefully in Ugreen's backyard here, community solar and storage. So we've got a handful of solar projects that we have lent to, and a couple of solar and storage there, which is exciting. Those are all with Generate Capital as our sponsor. A lot of building decarbonization as well. So Sarah, you mentioned Albany Hyatt. So that's great to see that. This is kind of the intersection of our two presentations, which is that we also, New York Green Bank does come in alongside PACE quite often. So an example of that would be the Albany Hyatt Hotel, and also Wildflower Farms we're involved with, and that's an example of how we can be flexible. Some construction lenders don't love to come in alongside PACE, but we think it's a tremendous value add. And then a construction to term loan as well for the Arlington at Poughkeepsie, which is relatively new, and that's mixed use, all electric housing and commercial. Okay, cool. So yeah, that's all I've got. But if you want to stay connected, feel free to shoot me an email, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Wes. That was great. So we're going to open it up to 10 or 15 minutes of questions, Q&A, if people have questions. Wes, there actually is a question for you right now.
Okay.
Which is, can Wes talk about the recent deal with Tenet to provide warehousing financing for consumer loans to EV buyers? Since NYG Green Bank lends at market rates, how does this benefit consumers? Is there anything in place to help low-income consumers specifically? Any foreseen workforce benefits? So that's the question. That's from Chris Carrick. Thank you, Chris.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So on the Tenet deal, this is an exciting deal that was pretty recent. It was one of the first securitizations in the state of a fleet of electric vehicles. So I didn't work on it personally, but folks are pretty excited about it. I think in that case, I'd have to get back to you about whether there's any specific options for low-income consumers. I think in this case, that area of the market is so new that I think the focus there is on just trying to expand the ability to securitize or repackage financings for electric vehicles, which could open up a whole lot more affordability for electric vehicles in the long term. But yeah, I'd have to get back to you with more specifics.
That's great. Thank you. There's one other question that came in. I'm also just I'm gonna give everyone the option to unmute if they want. So, obviously please be polite, but if there's a break and you want to jump in and ask a question, people can unmute. And if there's questions that multiple of the presenters want to jump in on, that's great as well. This question just came in the text box from John Mallon. Says, I operate JMC Marketing Communications and PR out of Kingston, New York. New York State certified service disabled veteran owned business with a keen interest in supporting NYSERDA and other green energy initiatives with green communications or as a subcontractor. I'm sorry, it wasn't a question, but there we go. That is John Mallon of JMC Marketing and Communications and PR out of Kingston. So
Yeah, I would just recommend to John, keep an eye on our funding opportunities page. Our marketing and communications teams do occasionally solicit for contractors for marketing and communications work. That would be through a competitive solicitation. So, keep an eye out there for sure. And we do have a Partner Connect portal or form, if you will, on our workforce development training program pages. And that really is designed for people that want to partner on workforce training, whether it's businesses, training providers. So there may be some interest there, John, as well.
Well, thank you. I'm in touch with the communications people, but I would be interested if you could point me to that Partner Connection portal.
Sure.
Sarah, I have a question about some of the funding programs that you were talking about for businesses. My question, I guess, is how accessible, or how does it work for a small business, like a very small business? A lot of our UGreen members are very small businesses. They might have 5 or 10 employees or something like that. Are some of these programs still valuable for a small business of that scale?
So the Open CPACE program was really designed to facilitate large projects, and with the purpose of having a substantial impact on emission reductions through those larger properties. It really depends on the capital provider and what their preferred financing parameters are. But for the most part, we're looking at a range of around 500,000 in financing up to, 20, 30 million or more.
Okay, great. Let's see, any other questions from the audience? Oh, okay, let's see. There we go, Henry?
Hi, yes, Henry Gage. Question, this has to do with workforce development. If someone could speak a bit more about that, because I look at New York's 2030 goal of 70% energy from renewable sources and look at where we are today, we basically need to speed up by at least 2 to 3x. And when I talk to people who are in the business, like the folks at Hot Water Solutions, for example, and others, they say they have difficulty finding people. Can you speak a bit about how are we going to scale up training so that we can meet the objective? Because some of these small businesses really don't have time for that or resources.
Great question.
Hang on, sorry, I was muted. Did anybody else want to jump in, or I'm going to start?
Go for it, Adele, yeah.
Yeah, great question. We wrestle with this every day. We work closely, as I mentioned earlier, with our partners at New York State Department of Labor, Empire State Development. And, years ago we had a training issue, but now we have a labor supply issue, as you pointed out. And if you think about our recent job study as part of the Just Transition Working Group that was supported in Climate Action Council, we are anticipating 211,000 or so new jobs by 2030. So that's not insignificant. We're trying to figure out how to work with current training providers like pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs, like community college programs, to help them scale up. And that's really to build out the capacity for them to train more, in addition for them to incorporate clean energy content, as well as trying to figure out how to start sooner, right? Working more with middle schools, high schools to start educating students earlier about alternative paths to clean energy jobs. Not everybody's going to go to college. Maybe they want to go to a union job. Perhaps they just want to go right to work out of college. So we're excited to do more with high schools and technical high schools and middle schools to do more to promote career awareness and
I'm
career
sorry, it's fading
opportunities.
in and out.
Oh, sorry, can you hear me now? Hello?
I wonder
I
if,
can hear you, Adele, or at least I can.
yeah, I
my
wonder
sound
if
looks
Henry
good.
might have lost service or something.
Yeah, we can make sure he has your presentation. He may have landed a little late, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I'm happy to talk to him directly if you'd like.
I mean, can you talk a little bit about, is there funding for, even small grants for special programming for high schools? If a community organization wanted to work, to build awareness among, high school populations, how might you be able to work with them?
Yeah, I do anticipate new funding opportunities in the future, hopefully the near future. We're looking at getting additional funds to do more of that work, to provide more first come, first serve, perhaps application-based programs to promote career awareness. So stay tuned. It can be part of a POM 3981 project, but again, don't forget that those projects really have to be very clearly tied to a business demand. But as we get new funding with more flexibility, we think we'll have opportunities to do more on career awareness with smaller organizations as well as school districts.
That's great. We do have about 5 minutes left if anyone has other questions and wants to jump in.
Actually, would you mind if I jump in for 1 minute to just make sure everyone noticed in the chat? Ugreen, the Ulster Green Economy Network, is a no cost to join, very wonderful, very cohesive network that some of the coolest businesses in Ulster County have joined, and they're helping each other. They're helping each other find resources. A couple of them have started developing training programs together. I put in the chat the link for joining. If you are an Ulster County business or nonprofit, please do. And I also put in the chat what's coming up. Part 2 of this webinar series, we have a couple folks from the Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnership who are going to be unpacking as much as possible about the Inflation Reduction Act, which we're all watching as it unfolds. That is on February 8th. On February 9th in the evening, our mixer at Diamond Mills Tavern in Saugerties. And on March 2nd, Adam Bosch, the CEO of Pattern for Progress, is going to be reporting on a really comprehensive study that they did about EV charging, what and where and what kind and how much does it cost and what's it compatible with, so we can really tackle charging deserts and work with our businesses to get more charging installed. I'm done.
Melissa, is Ugreen a not-for-profit or is it a government agency?
It is a program of Ulster County being coordinated by Sustainable Hudson Valley as a contract partner. And I put the link in the chat for you to check it out.
Thank you.
I'm going to also put in this link that I just put in the chat is the link to the second webinar in this series, funding local clean energy projects with the Inflation Reduction Act. That's February 8th. So there's a link in there to that as well, just so people see that in the chat. I did just have one more question too in the chat so far, which is from Murad Hirji, and they say, I have a question about how to finance more green cars in the area. If anyone wants to take that. Oh, and also Henry is back. Maybe he can also continue his question from before.
I can
Yeah.
just jump in quickly to say that PACE financing can be used for charging stations as part of a building's improvement. So it's not the cars directly, but it's part of the infrastructure.
Mhm. Yeah, and there's like a kind of a growing group of companies that will provide financing for consumers to get electric vehicles, which is great. Like Tenant is an example of one of those. Yeah, and electric vehicle charging stations are really important too. They have their own challenges and hurdles to finance in some cases. But yeah, those are two things that people are working on.
Great, thank you for that. let's see, Henry, are you back? Did you want to continue your question?
Yeah, sure. I'll ask the question in a different way. I did join late. I had some things I needed to do, but this is very important to me. I'm curious to know, just in general, is there much of an appetite for a large-scale training operation? Here's what I mean by that. In the past, when states or municipalities have experienced crisis, or if you look at the municipality model where it's time to do work on a street, they know how to coordinate those logistics, but this is kind of a different kind of beast. Is there much of an appetite to have a scale up in New York where, let's say, we focus on training 100 people to get ready to do this work so that the capacity is there?
Yeah, absolutely, Henry. That is our goal, to figure out how to scale up these training projects. But again, it's really got to be tied to some business demand. So if we have a group of employers in a region looking to, I'll make up an example, put 100 individuals through an HVAC training boot camp or a heat pump boot camp, we would love to see that type of proposal, to be honest.
Okay, because I'm interested in looking into that, because I've been looking at some content from Paul Finn and others, and I recognize that even if we can't do the entire set of work, there's at least work we can start with to save $1 billion over a decade by at least doing air sealing. I'll look at the chat later and figure out how to follow up with you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Feel free to reach out to me. That'd be great.
Yeah, we can also send send contact information out to all the participants for you three presenters, so people will be able to contact you easily. Well, if there are final questions, we can definitely, I think, take another one or two. We are, it's just about 2, so people can also leave if they want to, but if there are a few last questions, we can take them, I'd say.
Actually, not to put our Ulster County contacts on the spot, but we have several county staff. Did you have any wrap-up comments? We're always glad to have you in the room.
No, I think from the Office of Economic Development and the Department of Environment, the county appreciates the work that everybody puts into putting these webinars together, and especially what Sustainable Hudson Valley is doing in the support for the Ulster Green Economy Network. I would encourage and appreciate everybody to, all the attendees, to look into that program to see whether or not the model fits them and what their interests are. And I'm so happy to hear members of attendees are talking about air sealing, insulation, talking about heating and cooling systems, and exploring ways that we can get local workforce trained in those. It's going to be one of the goals of UGreen to really focus on what our needs are as we transition to a green economy. And just lastly, really, I just want to thank the attendees for coming. Your input and questions have been invaluable to us, and we appreciate all that you do. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Michael. Well, thank you everyone for coming, and we'll send out a follow-up for all the participants with some information and some contacts. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much to the presenters. Thank you so much for presenting today. Very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting us. We'll have a nice afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.